Welcome to the Self Love Model. On this podcast, we have open hearted and honest conversations about all things self love and the journey of self discovery. This podcast is for those on an everlasting journey of their own evolution, and most importantly, a safe space for us to heal together. I'm your host, Sid, and welcome to your self love session. All right, we are back with another episode, y'all. How great is it that today you guys get to listen to my beautiful voice that I know that you've grown to love? I hope, at least, if you listen to the podcast, that you don't hate my voice. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I hope you guys have had a wonderful week, and thanks so much for tuning into the Self Love Model, baby. If you're watching, you'll notice that it looks a little bit different because today I'm filming with a different lens. You guys get to be more like close up and personal with me, and I put on makeup and it looks cute just for you guys. So, let's get into today's episode, shall we? Okay, actually, before we get into the episode, guys, or more so ladies, I've had a day, I tell you, an emotional day. I've been going through it, okay? And I'm gonna be really honest, I definitely cried a lot today, and I started filming this episode later than I intended to just because I was really in my feels all morning. But you know what? I felt like I needed to process it. Like, we can't control when things come up for us, right? So when they come up, and I allowed myself to feel all the feels and let the floodgates open and just allowed myself to just sit with it and cry and really feel all the things that I've been feeling, you know? I felt like I needed to do that and to honor myself, put myself first before I have like the mental capacity to do a podcast episode, you know? Because I'm like, either way, it's going to get done. It doesn't matter if it's not as early as I would have liked to start this. You know, it's okay. Things happen, life happens. And that's something I'm really proud of myself for now is I feel like I'm very good at going with the flow, obviously with structure in my day, but also relaxing and knowing that it's fine. Like, everything's going to get done and everything's going to work out. I feel like it has just put a lot less stress on myself being this way and having this mindset of just like free flowing and just going with the flow of life, you know? Okay, so obviously, you guys probably know what we're talking about today by the topic of the podcast. Today, we are talking about becoming your own best friend through the power of self compassion. This is a topic that I'm really, really passionate about because it's something that I've spent time working on within my own life, and it's something that I think it's a big part of self-love, and a big part of my healing journey is just learning to be kinder and to be more gentle with myself. I feel like that's also been just a really big theme and a lot of what I talk about lately in my episodes. If you guys have been listening and paying attention, you know that I've been really big on just being more gentle and kind with myself because um and really being in my feminine energy. That's something that I feel like have been really big for me because I'm someone who naturally I feel like shows up in their masculine energy, and I feel like a lot of us, a lot of females and just people in general now, we tend to feel more comfortable showing up in our masculine energy, especially our society is just more masculine in general. That especially because I'm also someone who's very like career driven right now in this season of my life, and that means showing up more in my masculine. But When you're too much in one energy, that's when you can experience burnout, and be in you can start to be out of alignment and unbalanced. So that's why I'm like, outside of like my ambitions and my career, I am a very feminine person, and I feel like that's also how I want to build my business too. Is I want to build a slow, gentle business. That is my business model. So, to start today's episode off, I feel like it only makes sense to start with the definition of self compassion, because we can't move forward without the basic understanding of what self compassion means. And I'm sure most of you probably know what self compassion means, but let's just, just in case, I don't know what level of journey each one of us is at. And I know that when I first began my healing journey, this was a very, very foreign concept to me. I knew what compassion was, and I knew what having compassion for others, but when it came to compassion for myself, that's when I was like, "Huh? Like what do you mean?" type of thing, you know? So self-compassion is treating yourself with kindness, understanding, and acceptance when you're facing challenges. It's about being aware of your suffering and responding to it with care and support rather than self-criticism. And I've spent a lot of my life where I've been my own worst critic. And that's something that we hear a lot, right? Is a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, I'm my own worst critic." And I feel like that's something I'll say to people now too. It's like, "Oh yeah, like we're always hardest on ourselves," because it's a real thing, and it's a real thing, and it's also a very natural thing for us to do. So I feel like instead of blaming ourselves and like being like, "Oh man," instead of blaming ourselves and being ashamed of it, realize that this is a completely natural thing to really be your own worst critic, because our brain naturally functions like this, to where it wants to protect us. It's constantly seeking out problems, and that is just the way that our brain is wired. There was this podcast episode that I started listening to, about self-compassion. I didn't finish it, and the reason why I didn't decide to finish it was because I wanted to try something different today. Because for a lot of my episodes where I have like a specific topic like this I want to talk about and really educate my listeners, I like to do a lot of research ahead of time to make sure that I am providing as much value as I can, and that I am speaking correctly on what I'm talking about. Um, and I've done that for most of my episodes, but for this one, and something that I'm trying to do now, is really just to be confident and to be more intuitive with myself, my voice, and whatever comes up in the moment. And I find that when I do too much research, like it's good to be prepared. And I find that I'm glad that I've been doing that, because it's definitely helped me show up better for you guys and be more organized within my episodes. But at the same time, I feel like when you do too much research, I like to where I feel like it almost takes my voice away a little bit. And I just want to keep this really authentic to me and my voice, my perspectives, and what I've learned in my own experiences, instead of diluting it with everything that I'm learned in that, like from what I listen to, to where you start to like speak like them. So yeah, I'll definitely link the podcast episode if you guys want to check it out afterwards and really understand the concept more. Because um in that episode about self-compassion, the guest I was on, her name is Kristen something. But her work is specifically known for like self compassion. Like that is what she's about and what like she does research on. Her name is Dr. Kristen Neff. So she's a leading researcher and author on self compassion. Her work and resources are available on her website, and I can link those down below for you guys. But yeah, so self-compassion is something that I've worked on for a long time. And like I've told you guys, I've spent a lot of my life being my own worst critic. And I'm not going to lie, it does still show up for me all the freaking time. And I have to catch myself when that is happening. And that's why it's important to first understand the concept and to have like the knowledge and the idea of it. And then after that, that's when you can develop the self awareness because you've had that understanding now. So now you have the self, you can start to have the self awareness because you're familiar with the concept to where when it does start to show up in your life, that's when you can actually catch it faster and easier each time that it does show up. And some ways that it would show up for me in the past was so when I first began my healing journey, I was like very heavily in my masculine energy. I barely knew anything about the feminine or masculine energy. And when I first began my journey, I was going through a huge shift and transformation in my life. And that's when I started prep for the first time for my first ever bodybuilding show. And I remember at the time I was so big on discipline, on like pushing past my limits and really like, like just like very masculine and I even did the 75 hard, which I didn't complete, but I did like 25 days, I think, or more. I know I was like about to be like halfway or more with it. So you get the idea. I was very much in my masculine and I was like pushing because if you guys know about the 75 hard, it's like you're doing two workouts a day. They have to be at least 45 minutes and one has to be outdoors and like you need to like be pushing yourself. Like if you want to really like do it right, like you got to like push yourself. And it's like even on the days that you don't feel like doing it, you gotta do it. Otherwise, you gotta start over. And then on top of the workout, you gotta drink a gallon of water, read 10 pages, and take a progress picture every day and follow a specific diet. So I decided to do this when I was on prep because I was like, oh, you know what? Perfect. Like this will help keep me even more disciplined. Like I can basically do my prep and do 75 hard. So I was very much in like a push and like in my masculine energy for a long time during that time and really had no idea what it meant to really listen to my body and being intuitive with what I needed. Like I didn't know if I needed to rest. I just was not very good with those little cues like that. I just remember in this phase of my life, I was not gentle with myself at all. Not I was starting to embark on this healing journey and this self-love journey. Um, but I wasn't the kindest to myself. I didn't know how to really listen to my body and its needs. And especially because I was on prepping for this bodybuilding show. Um, when you're doing a bodybuilding show, you become very critical of your body because let's be honest, that's really the whole point of the show. I mean, there's a lot more to that, and I feel like there's a lot of positive aspects to it. But for me, when I was competing, I definitely became like very critical of my own body. And especially after I was done competing, that's when I really would look at my body and just like when I started to put on weight, when my body was more inflamed, I would be really hard on myself and I would look at myself and just really be disgusted with my body. And that's like a whole another story, a whole like thing that I really had to work on myself. But at the time, I really lacked a lot of self compassion for myself and was really hard on myself. And even if I like, so that was like one way that was showing up for me was when my body dysmorphia was really starting to show up for me in my life. I was really hard on my body and really hard on myself to where I wouldn't allow myself to rest and wouldn't listen to my body. So those are just some examples. And I feel like right now in my life, how my like inner critic shows up for me a lot is through my businesses, with my podcast, especially with my photography. That's like the biggest, um I don't know if pain point is the right word to say for me, but that's definitely like the biggest thing that I struggle with, being a recovering perfectionist. And for someone who has really struggled with imposter syndrome, photography for me, every time I finish a session, it's like in the moment, I always think, I'm like, how can I make this better? And I feel like I can just like be really hard on myself. But I've learned that taking space for my own creation has helped me tremendously. Um, and yeah, so that's like some ways that self compassion shows up, or not self compassion, my inner critic can show up for me. And it is through these experiences and lessons that have taught me just how important self compassion is. Another reason why self compassion is something I'm really passionate about is because it's a huge component when you are in a healing journey, and it's essential for your growth and to develop your self confidence. So, throughout these past years, since I've been on my own healing journey, I've learned to be kinder to myself, to be more gentle with myself, and to give myself grace when it is needed, but also keeping a fine balance of having structure and discipline in my life, and to know when I can push myself a little bit harder. But that has definitely taken time and it's taken practice and awareness. And like I've said, it's still something that does show up in my life. So now let's talk about why self compassion can be hard. So, self compassion can be hard because, like I've mentioned already in the episode, it's literally a natural thing that our brain does to try and protect us. Okay, and then right now I actually just grabbed my laptop because I couldn't remember all the reasons that I like wrote down for why self-compassion is hard. I'm being so honest right now. But self-compassion can be difficult due to a variety of factors, so including learned negative beliefs about oneself, societal pressures, and the potential for self-criticism to be perceived as motivation. Okay, so we're going to start with um the negative so we're going to start with the negative beliefs about oneself. So that can be if you have like a negative core belief, which a lot of us probably do, and if you haven't taken the time to look at what your core beliefs are, I highly encourage you to really take a look and see what your core beliefs are. And this is actually something that I will be talking about a little bit more in an upcoming episode with a very special guest. So stay tuned for that one. To summarize it, core beliefs are beliefs that we can develop at a young age. You can be developed through our surroundings, our environment, through our parents, our like anyone who is like a authority figure in our life. There's different factors that can happen to where we can start to have these beliefs about ourselves. And when you have these negative core beliefs, it can lead to you feeling like you're not deserving of kindness or compassion to yourself. And reason number two is societal influences. And reason number three, this one I find really interesting and I want to talk about it a lot more. Reason number three is self criticism. So this one is one that I've also have touched on already a little bit in here. Um, a lot of times we can feel like in order to be motivated and in order to accomplish our goals, we need to be hard on ourselves and to push ourselves. And using self criticism can be a way that we push ourselves and motivate ourselves, right? And it can really lead us to think that that's the only way that we are going to achieve and accomplish our goals. So, in a way, when this is your mindset and how you approach your goals in life, self compassion can feel like a threat to your motivation. And what's crazy about this reasoning is that when you have self compassion and when you learn to really develop self compassion for yourself, you actually become more motivated, inspired, and you have a more positive outlook in your life. And with some of the research I've done, that has been like a really big thing is that having self compassion will help you achieve your goals faster and help you actually feel more motivated. So self-compassion, it's a way more effective route to go in achieving your goals and to feel motivated than self-criticism. And the last reason that you could have a hard time with self-compassion is that you simply have a problematic relationship with yourself. And that's why you're here. And I feel like this one correlates with reason number one is just having the negative core beliefs. Because when you have negative core beliefs, you can tend to have low self esteem, which in turn you can really be more like self critical and blame yourself and shame yourself for things, and therefore can make it hard for you to have compassion for yourself. I remember a long time ago when I first learned about self compassion, I was listening to this podcast episode and I remember I remember this so vividly. I was living in my apartment. I was living in this apartment complex and I was walking my dog, listening to the podcast, and I remember the podcast host was talking about self-compassion, and he had brought up like an example or an experiment that they did that really showed what self compassion is. And he basically had these people uh, come in and basically had them, I think, I don't remember exactly if this is how the experiment went. And I don't even remember what podcast it was that I heard this from, but I'm going to try my best to tell you guys what I remember, and hopefully it's close enough to what it actually is. So they had people basically like write down things that they didn't like about themselves or just like negative things about themselves, and had them write it out and then had them say out loud. And after that, they had their like little siblings come into the room with them, and then they asked them to say those negative things they just said to themselves to their siblings. And this practice basically showed how, like, because once they were asked to do that, obviously they felt uncomfortable. It was harder for them to say that to their sibling than it was to themselves. So this experiment basically showed what self-compassion is and like the concept of it, because it can be so easy to say these negative things to ourselves, but these are not things that we would say to our siblings or the people that we care about. So why would you say that to yourself? So the next time you catch yourself being hard on yourself, being negative to yourself, really think of yourself as your best friend and like see yourself as your own best friend, as someone that you love and care for. And I think that might help you change how you talk to yourself. The more that you begin to work on your relationship with yourself, the more that it will translate into every aspect of your life. When you start to work on yourself, you start to change as a person and you learn to love yourself better. People start to treat you better. People begin to see how you want to be treated because of the standards that you have set for yourself. And I find that when people are kinder to themselves, they're often kinder to those around them. And that's why now, when people are not kind to me and when I see someone who is not a kind person, I rarely take any of that stuff personally anymore, because I feel for them and I know that it's the way they are showing up as a person and the way they're treating others. It's only showing who they are on the inside and what is going on in their inner world. And another fun thing that I wanted to talk about was that I actually talked about this concept on my Instagram in February 20. Hold on, let me look at this. I have the post screenshotted on my notes here because I just think it's really cool that like however many years later that I am still so passionate about the things I talked about back in 2021. Yeah. So back in February 20th, 2021, I made a post and I captioned it. I'll read it to you guys. What if instead of being your own worst critic, you became your own biggest fan? And that is called having self compassion. It's responding in the same supportive and understanding you would with a good friend when you have a difficult time, fail, or notice something you don't like about yourself. Self compassion is something I learned at the beginning of my healing journey. And when I first learned it, I was literally like, oh, wow. It felt like a concept that everyone knew about except for me. But every time I talk about self compassion with people, I realize that a lot of people don't really know what it is. We're our own biggest critics and we're often so hard on ourselves. I am definitely most guilty of this, and that's on being a recovering perfectionist. Self compassion equals self love. Next time you have a difficult time in your life, instead of criticizing yourself for everything you did wrong, ask yourself, this is really difficult right now. How can I comfort and care for myself in this moment? How you talk to yourself matters. Be kind to yourself. Let's start practicing self compassion by honoring and accepting your humanness, because after all, you're only human. Okay, like how prolific. Oh my gosh. Honestly, I might reuse that caption. So if you guys see me posting with that same caption, you listen to this episode, just mind your business. Okay, so now that we have a better understanding and I've shared and opened up with you guys some of my own struggles and how it's affected me and impacted me in my own life, let's get into the next part of the episode where we can actually talk about ways that we can begin to work on our inner dialogue and some tips to help you practice self compassion if you too feel very called out right now and feel like this is something that you struggle with. Okay. I had to fix my camera setting a little bit because I am filming during the daytime right now, which it's it's been a while since I filmed during the daytime, and I have the window with the natural light coming in, which is so nice. I love natural light. I love sunshine, but it's like I feel like it'll get bright and then dark, so if you guys are watching, you probably will notice, but if not, you probably could care less. Okay, so back to our programming. So now tips to practice more self-compassion in our daily lives. Tip number 1 is treat yourself like a friend. And this one I've already talked about, and I also made an Instagram post that had different that really showed how our thoughts can be to ourselves and when those thoughts come up, what we would usually say to a friend. So I'll also link my Instagram post on the bottom in the show notes if you guys haven't looked at it yet. But basically, just ask yourself when you are going through a difficult time, like what would I say to my best friend if they were going through this, and just really begin the practice of treating yourself like your best friend. And tip number 2 is just to acknowledge without judgment. So instead of criticizing yourself the next time that something goes wrong, really just acknowledge what is happening in this moment. Maybe it's really hard right now, or maybe you're feeling a little bit disappointed with yourself and how you showed up. Instead of trying to like fix or blame, just let yourself acknowledge what is happening and without putting the pressure or the shame on that thing. I hope that makes sense. And tip number 3 is daily self check ins. So, if this is something that you feel like it's a big thing that you really want to work on, I highly recommend it. When I first began my healing journey, that's something that I was trying to do. I think I'm going to be really honest. I did like 2 days. It didn't stick for me, my daily check ins. But at the time, it did help those 2 days. Actually, I'm lying. I think I did more than 2 days. I would have to, like, go back to my journaling. I just know that I didn't stick, but for some people, this could be very helpful, and also journaling is a huge thing, a huge practice that I personally really like, and I also know that journaling in itself is not for everyone as well, and that's okay. But journaling is something that, as I reflect back, is something that I've been doing since I was a kid. I feel like as a kid growing up, I didn't have much of a voice. I felt like I didn't really have anyone to talk to about my feelings. That was not like a common thing in my household. I didn't really have any safe spaces anywhere. So that's where I turned to my journal. And I would basically, anytime I was upset, when I was angry at the world, when I was sad, when I felt misunderstood, I would go to my journal and journal everything out and just release it onto the paper. And that is something I still do in practice because for me, it's just such a powerful and essential tool in my life. And I think that what is nice about journaling and doing a self daily check in is that it really just helps you gain more awareness and really taking that time to just sit with yourself and to just like give yourself that space for you and to just check in and to just having that space will make a really different. Well, just having that space will make a really big difference because a lot of times we are moving so fast through life and there's a lot of stuff going on that just taking a second to really sit and check in with ourselves is all the difference and really all that we need. And tip number 4 is to practice self soothing. So, this is also a concept that I've talked about in some of my earlier episodes. The easiest way for me to explain self soothing is as a baby, when something's wrong, you learn to self-soothe by like either sucking on your thumb or sucking on a pacifier, or you'll cry if you need something. Like there's different ways that we naturally know how to self-soothe when we're babies. But as we get older, there's obviously different techniques and things that we can do to help us when we are going through it to help self-soothe. This can be writing out affirmations, and or this could be for me today, as I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, I was really going through it and I cried. I went and took a shower and really just let myself cry. I find that in the showers where I feel most comfortable and releasing all my emotions, all my tears. And I found myself just naturally hugging myself as I'm in the shower. And it felt so good. And I started really talking it out with myself. And I started really saying these affirmations out loud to where sometimes we want to hear it from a friend and sometimes we really just need to hear it for ourselves. And like I really like gave myself that space. I really like was just crying, saying these affirmations and really just like hugging myself and really feeling my body and like feeling the hug. And it was really nice. I really needed that. So that is tip number 4. Tip number 5 is just letting go of perfection, which I know, guys, I know this one's way easier said than done because this is something I still am working on myself, but just reminding ourselves that we are only human and that we're not perfect and that we're going to mess up and things are going to go wrong and it's okay. Each time we learn from it, we pick ourselves back up and we treat ourselves with kindness and grace and just do better next time. And the next time that your inner critic shows up, I don't want you guys to get upset. I don't want you guys to blame yourself. And I don't want you to be like, oh, it's happening again, I'm being so hard on myself. Really look at your inner critic like it is a person who is just trying to protect you. It's our brain trying to protect us. And it's something that if we didn't realize until now, it's just a part of us. It's just a part and okay, if it's something that we didn't realize until now, it's something that's been a part of us for a long time now. It's essentially really a part of us. So instead of being upset about it or just being ashamed of it, really look at your inner critic with love and gentleness because it is still a part of you, even though it's something that we're trying to change and work on. I would say look at your inner critic and thank thank your inner critic for trying to protect you, but then also realize that you don't need that protection anymore and that whatever the inner critic is saying is not the truth. And if it helps, you can even name the inner critic, like give it a name or persona. Okay, you can say, "Oh, that's judgmental Jane again." And after you recognize it and you acknowledge what is happening, that's when you can actually pause and respond with compassion. So, this is where we're using the frontal part of our brain. I know Amanda would be so proud of me right now. But this is where we say, I hear you. But okay. So when the critic says you're not good enough, this is where you say, I hear you. And I don't believe that anymore. I'm learning and I am more than good enough. In fact, I was born for this. And lastly, find the fear beneath the criticism. So this is when you have time to, sit and really reflect and see why this inner critic came up and what it is showing you. Because I feel like everything that shows up for us in our lives are often there to teach us something and to help us connect with ourselves on a deeper level. So yeah, that is all the tips that I have when it comes to practicing self compassion in our lives and just some ways that we can begin to really nurture the inner dialogue in our head because how we speak to ourselves matters. And whether you realize it or not, our brain is absorbing everything and that it really does make a difference in our lives. Everything begins with us. And once you begin to work on yourself and once you really truly learn to love yourself, it really will translate into every aspect of our lives and truly transform you. Whether you're in a season of growth, healing, or just trying to make it through the day, I hope you remember that you are worthy of compassion, especially from yourself. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If this episode reminded you to soften your inner voice just a little bit, then I hope you carry that energy into the rest of your week. Speak to yourself with love and choose grace over pressure. Self compassion isn't weakness, it is your superpower. All right, guys, this has been another beautiful self love session on the self love model with your girl Sid. I hope this episode helped you guys in some way, shape, or form, and that you were able to learn a thing or two from this. And if this inspired you to treat yourself with more kindness today, make sure you spread the kindness and love with someone who you feel like could use this message and could use more self compassion in their life as well. And if you haven't already, make sure you follow the show on wherever you're listening to this episode on. And also leave a review. Let me know what you think because it really does help this podcast and me grow and help us really spread the good message. Until next time, speak gently to yourself. You're listening. Bye, guys. Yay. Down.